the belief, the band is the product. The name on the marquee is what people are buying. The individual, the voice, the face, the one everyone actually came to see, is replaceable, interchangeable, just one piece of a larger machine. 10 rock bands held that belief. They acted on it, and every single one of them got the same answer back. This is that answer. Number 10. The Doors. Jim Morrison died on July 3, 1971, in a bathtub in Paris. He was 27 years old. The remaining 3 members of The Doors, Ray Manzarek, Robbie Krieger, John Dinsmore, were in Los Angeles rehearsing new material when the news reached them. And here is the decision they made. They kept going, not as a tribute act, not as a side project, as The Doors. 3 months after Morrison's death, they released Other Voices. Then Full Circle in 1972, both albums credited to The Doors, both with Manzarek and Krieger splitting lead vocal duties. Both records that the surviving members have spent most of the following 50 years quietly avoiding any discussion of. I need you to hold this detail for a second. The band chose not to find a replacement singer. Krieger has said they approached Paul McCartney. They approached Iggy Pop. Nothing came of it. Instead, the 2 instrumentalists divided the microphone between them and made 2 albums that peaked at numbers 31 and 68 on the Billboard 200. A number that looks more damning when you know that L.A. Woman, recorded with Morrison months before his death, went platinum, and is still one of the defining documents of that era. The official position of the surviving Doors has shifted over the years, but Robbie Krieger has said it plainly himself. It was like the Stones going on without Mick Jagger. He said it might have been a stupid idea. To his credit, he said it. Other Voices and Full Circle are not disasters. The musicianship is real, but they are the sound of a band discovering the hard way that 3/4 of something is not that thing. Manzarek's keyboard could carry a song. Krieger's guitar could carry a song. Neither of them could carry Jim Morrison. The band quietly disbanded in August 1973. No announcement, no farewell tour, a brief mention in the back pages of Rolling Stone. You were handed a version of this story that ends with L.A. Woman. The actual version has 2 more chapters, and those chapters are the lesson. Number 9. Aerosmith. July 28, 1979, Cleveland Municipal Stadium, the World Series of Rock. Aerosmith is sharing a bill with AC/DC, Journey, Ted Nugent, and Thin Lizzy. Backstage, a confrontation between band members' wives involving a glass of milk. This is documented. This actually happened. Ends with Joe Perry walking off the grounds and out of the band. That is not the story. The story is what came next. Steven Tyler and the remaining members, Tom Hamilton, Joey Kramer, Brad Whitford, made the call. They would continue. They replaced Perry with Jimmy Crespo. Then in 1981, Whitford left too, and they replaced him with Rick Dufay. And in August 1982, they released Rock in a Hard Place, the only Aerosmith studio album in the band's history that does not feature Joe Perry. The only one. The record reached number 32 on the Billboard 200. Tyler's voice was still there. Hamilton and Kramer were still there. But nobody was in the room who understood how Aerosmith actually worked. Joey Kramer put it in his own autobiography. He said it was not a real Aerosmith record. It was just him, Steven, and Tom. with a fill-in guitar player. Those are his words, not mine. Here is what the numbers confirmed. Before Perry left, Aerosmith was one of the biggest bands in America. Toys in the attic, rocks, platinum records, arenas. After Perry left, they were playing clubs and theaters they were struggling to fill. Rock in a Hard Place was certified gold in 1989, 7 years after release. That is not the trajectory of a band that is fine, and this is not a coincidence. You know it isn't. I just wanna stay with you in those moments. Perry and Whitford came back in the spring of 1984. The reunion tour was called Back in the Saddle, and within a few years, Aerosmith was one of the biggest bands in the world again. Because the math was simple. 2 of the 5 people in that room were doing something the other 3 could not replicate, and the audience knew it before the band did. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 8, The Who. Keith Moon died on September 7, 1978. He was 32 years old. Accidental overdose of the medication he had been prescribed to manage alcohol withdrawal. The remaining 3, Pete Townshend, Roger Daltrey, John Entwistle, made a decision that was understandable and human and wrong. They kept going. They brought in Kenny Jones, formerly of the Small Faces and the Faces, a respected drummer, a professional, a man who played nothing like Keith Moon, because nobody played like Keith Moon. Moon was not playing drums behind The Who. He was having a conversation with Townshend's guitar and Daltrey's voice in real time, at volume, in a way that has not been replicated before or since. Face Dances came out in March 1981. It's Hard followed in September 1982. Both albums charted. Both albums were critically received as the product of a band that had lost something essential and did not yet know how to say so. Townshend knew. In December 1982, at the final concert of the farewell tour, the actual farewell, he said it out loud. He said The Who could no longer be the band it had been. That was Pete Townshend acknowledging what the audience had felt for 4 years. Follow this. The Who that played Woodstock, The Who that made Who's Next, The Who that made Quadrophenia, broke up in 1982 because the drummer died. Not because the 2 surviving founders couldn't play, not because there was no audience, because Townshend understood something about how The Who worked. That some of the bands later on this list never figured out. Some of them needed a label to explain it to them. Some of them needed the charts to do it. Pete Townshend did the math himself and walked away. That is the most dignity anyone on this list will show. Number 7, INXS. Michael Hutchence died on November 22, 1997, in a hotel room in Sydney. He was 37 years old. INXS had spent 20 years becoming one of the most important bands in the world. Need You Tonight, Never Tear Us Apart, Devil Inside, and the reason those songs worked the way they worked was Hutchence, his voice, his presence, a kind of charisma on a stage that was genuinely rare. The remaining members tried several things in the years after his death. guest singers for one-off shows, a touring arrangement with John Stevens. None of it took hold in any lasting way. And then in 2004, they announced the plan, a reality television competition, produced by Mark Burnett, the man behind Survivor, aired on CBS. 11 weeks, 50,000 applicants. The show was called Rockstar INXS. Take a second with that. 50,000 people auditioned to replace Michael Hutchence on television, while the band watched from a panel of seats on a stage.
Tell you I love y'all.
The winner was a Canadian singer named J.D. Fortune. He had been living in his car when he applied, and that detail, which sounds like the setup to a triumph, is actually the saddest part of the story because it tells you exactly how far the INXS brand had traveled from where it started.
And they could never tear us apart.
The band that once sold out stadiums on the back of one of the most magnetic frontmen in rock history was now selecting his replacement on a network television competition. They released Switch in November 2005 with Fortune on vocals.
You were there.
The lead single Pretty Vegas reached number 7 on the adult top 40. The band and Epic Records parted ways the following year. Fortune was fired at an airport in Hong Kong in 2009. They found another singer after that, and then another. INXS played their final concert on November 11, 2012, and then it was over.
I'll have wings, but some of us.
Here is the truth. Hutchence was not a singer who happened to front INXS. He was the reason INXS was what it was. The band could not see that while he was alive, and they could not replace what they had lost. 50,000 people auditioning did not change that.
Tear us apart.
Number 6, Iron Maiden. Bruce Dickinson announced he was leaving Iron Maiden in 1993. The reasons were real: creative frustration, a desire to pursue a solo career, the sense that he had taken the band as far as he could for now. The decision was his, and the remaining members, Steve Harris, Dave Murray, Nico McBrain, Janet Gers, made their own decision in response. They would not stop. After a 4-year search, involving hundreds of auditions, they found Blaze Bayley, formerly of a band called Wolfsbane, a solid singer, a professional, a man with a powerful baritone voice that was a completely different instrument from Dickinson's operatic tenor. And that difference mattered, because the entire architecture of Iron Maiden's catalog had been built around what Dickinson could do at the top of his range. The X Factor came out in 1995. Virtual 11 followed in 1998. Both albums are the lowest charting studio releases Iron Maiden had produced since Killers in 1981. Virtual 11 failed to break the top 100 in the United States. The band, which had been filling arenas, found itself playing smaller venues. Some shows were canceled because Bayley was struggling with songs that had been written for a voice that operated in a completely different register. Blaze himself has said, years later, that there was no interest in the band, that things were going down. And here is what that actually means. It is not a criticism of Bayley. It is a documentation of a structural problem. Iron Maiden without Dickinson's voice was Iron Maiden with a load-bearing wall removed. The whole thing still stood, but the room felt different, and the audience noticed before the band admitted it.
You'll take my life, but I'll take yours too. You fire musket, but
In January 1999, Bayley was let go. Bruce Dickinson came back. Adrian Smith came back. Iron Maiden released Brave New World in 2000 and were one of the biggest acts in rock within the decade. The pattern had been corrected, but it took 5 years and 2 albums that Steve Harris himself has called the band's darkest commercial period.
you better stand, there's no turning back.
Number 5. Black Sabbath. April 27, 1979. Bill Ward delivered the news to Ozzy Osbourne on behalf of the other three. Osbourne has said he cannot remember exactly what was said, but the gist was that he was, in his own words, a pissed, coked-up loser and a waste of time for everyone concerned. Black Sabbath fired Ozzy Osbourne. The band's rationale was documented and real. Osbourne's substance abuse had become paralyzing. Rehearsals were not happening. Iommi has said directly that the band was dying, that something had to change. The firing was not irrational. What came after it was not what they expected. Osbourne signed with Jet Records. He hired a young guitarist named Randy Rhoads, and in September 1980, he released Blizzard of Oz, Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, Goodbye to Romance. The album went platinum. The follow-up, Diary of a Madman, went platinum. Osbourne did not fade. He exploded. He became the solo artist that defined the harder end of the early 1980s in a way that neither he nor Black Sabbath had managed in the late 1970s. Meanwhile, Black Sabbath hired Ronnie James Dio. Dio was a genuinely brilliant singer. Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules are legitimate records, and anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. But after Dio left in 1982, the band cycled through Ian Gillan, Glenn Hughes, and eventually Tony Martin across the following decade. Six singers in total after Osbourne. 6 attempts to find the voice that fit the name. None of them could do what Osbourne had done, which was not about technical ability, it was about identity. Ozzy Osbourne was the thing Black Sabbath was, and the market confirmed that fact the moment he left. The record is clear on this. Tony Iommi has said it plainly. When they replaced Ozzy with Dio, it gave them a reason to keep going. He was not saying they were better. He was saying they were still alive. There is a difference between survival and supremacy. Sabbath survived, Ozzy thrived, and everyone knew who the star was by 1981. Number 4, Van Halen. Here is the sequence. David Lee Roth departs in 1985. Sammy Hagar comes in. 5 records, 4 of which go to number 1 on the Billboard 200. The band has commercial success, and the narrative sets in. Van Halen is bigger than any individual singer. The machine works. You feed it a voice and it outputs hits. Hagar leaves in 1996. There is a brief, chaotic attempt to bring Roth back that collapses publicly at the MTV Video Music Awards and produces 2 songs for a compilation. And then the band turns to Gary Cherone, formerly of Extreme, a solid musician, a professional, a man who had never sold records on the scale that Van Halen sold records, and who was stepping into a context that had spent 12 years printing money. Van Halen III was released on March 17, 1998. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200. And it sold gold. Not platinum, gold. One of the most commercially reliable bands in the history of American rock released their first studio album in 3 years, and it sold gold. That had never happened before with this band. Every previous Van Halen album had gone at least platinum. Van Halen III is the only exception in their catalog. And here is what that actually means. Cherone was not the problem. The problem was the belief. The belief that the Van Halen name was so powerful, so self-sustaining, that any capable singer could step into it and the audience would follow. The audience declined to follow. They had followed through Roth. They had followed through Hagar. They drew the line at Chiron, not because of who he was, but because the band had mistaken its own brand for a guarantee. Chiron left in late 1999. A second album had been recorded and shelved. Van Halen did not release another studio album for 14 years. 14 years, and when they finally came back in 2012, they came back with David Lee Roth, the man the machine had decided it did not need in 1985. Number 3, Judas Priest.
Breaking the law, breaking the law. So much for the golden.
Rob Halford announced his departure from Judas Priest in May 1992. The reasons involved creative tensions, exhaustion, and a desire to explore musical directions outside the Priest framework. He formed a band called Fight. The departure was his. And Judas Priest spent 4 years looking for his replacement. 4 years. And here is where you need to follow this carefully, because at the end of those 4 years, after searching the world for a singer who could stand in the place of one of the most distinctive voices in heavy metal history, Judas Priest found Tim Owens. And Tim Owens, who went by the nickname Ripper, derived from a Judas Priest song, was the frontman of a Judas Priest tribute band, a band called British Steel, based in Akron, Ohio, performing Judas Priest songs in bars and clubs for whatever the local going rate was. That is not an opinion. That is what happened. The band brought Owens in. He recorded 2 studio albums with Judas Priest, Jugulator in 1997, Demolition in 2001. Jugulator received a Grammy nomination for 1 track, but neither album came close to the commercial and cultural weight of the Halford era. The band had to downscale from arenas to clubs. The story was so extraordinary that Hollywood made a film out of it in 2001, Rockstar, starring Mark Wahlberg, loosely based on Owens' trajectory from tribute singer to the actual band.
Breaking the law, breaking the law. So much for the golden.
And here is what I need you to sit with. The band spent 4 years searching for someone who could replace Rob Halford. At the end of that search, the best available candidate they could identify was a man who had built his career imitating Rob Halford. Not a different kind of singer, not a new direction. The closest available approximation of the original, a tribute act made literal. In 2003, Rob Halford came back. Judas Priest have been one of the dominant forces in metal ever since, because Halford was not interchangeable. He was the reason the thing worked. The tribute band knew that before the actual band did. Number 2, Mötley Crüe. February 10th, 1992. Mötley Crüe held a meeting and voted Vince Neil out of the band, 3-1. They issued a statement saying Neil had chosen to prioritize his hobby of car racing. Neil has said it came as a complete shock, that he was told 2 days after his birthday.
You know I'm a dreamer, but my heart...
The band was coming off Dr. Feelgood, their biggest album, #1 on the Billboard 200, 6 times platinum, the commercial peak of a career that had been building since 1981. And the remaining 3, Nikki Sixx, Tommy Lee, Mick Mars, looked at that momentum and made the calculation. The machine that produced Dr. Feelgood was the band. The singer was a component.
So I wouldn't come home, no, just when...
They would find a new component. They found John Corabi, formerly of a band called The Scream, a gifted singer and guitarist who brought something real to the recording sessions. The 1994 self-titled album they made together was, by many accounts, musically interesting, heavier, more ambitious than anything Crüe had released before. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200, and here is where the receipt appears.
Left all alone, take me to your heart.
The label that had signed Mötley Crüe, Elektra Records, had given the band a contract worth roughly $25 million. That contract was for Motley Crue, with Vince Neil. When the Corabi album failed to move the audience the label had paid for, the band's manager sat Corabi down and delivered a message.
Breaking the law, breaking the law. So much for the golden.
The words, as Corabi has recounted them directly, "I don't give a damn if Paul McCartney was fronting this band. It is not what they paid for. They want Vince Neil, or they are doing nothing." That is not an opinion, that is a recorded statement from the meeting. The label refused to fund the follow-up album unless Neil was reinstated. The band that had publicly fired its singer, that had filmed band members making jokes about his absence, that had explicitly positioned itself as a continuing enterprise beyond any individual member, that band was told by its own label that it was wrong, and the band complied. Corabi was let go in 1996. Neil returned for the 1997 album Generation Swine. And here is the final detail. The 1994 Mötley Crüe album with Corabi has since been removed from most major streaming platforms. The band has largely attempted to erase that chapter from its official history. Corabi himself has described it as the band burying 5 years of their own career because they cannot sell the story of Motley Crue without Vince Neil, because the label knew that before the band did, and the label was right. Number 1, the original Alice Cooper Band. April 8, 1974, Rio de Janeiro. The original Alice Cooper Band played their final show, Vincent Furnier on vocals, Glenn Buxton on lead guitar, Michael Bruce, Dennis Dunaway, Neil Smith, 5 people who had built one of the most distinctive brands in rock history together, from scratch, starting in Phoenix with instruments from a pawn shop and no guarantee of anything. By 1973, Billion Dollar Babies had hit number 1 in both the United States and the United Kingdom. The supporting tour broke box office records previously held by the Rolling Stones. These 5 people did that together. Every one of them believed it was the band that made it possible. That belief is the entire story. The band took what they expected to be a temporary break. Furnier went to work on a solo project. The remaining members waited for the phone to ring, and while they waited, Furnier released Welcome to My Nightmare in 1975 with a completely new group of musicians. Massive success, a television special, mainstream fame on a scale the original band had never individually reached. And then he did one more thing. He legally changed his name to Alice Cooper, not a stage name, his legal name, on paper. The remaining 3 original members eventually understood what that meant, and they did the only thing they could. They named themselves Billion Dollar Babies, after Alice Cooper's biggest album, and in 1977 released one record called Battle Axe. They built a theatrical stage show, planned a tour. The tour was canceled after 4 dates. The album's initial pressing had a mastering flaw that caused the stylist to skip, triggering a mass recall that killed its commercial momentum before it had any. Critics noted that Bruce's vocals sounded like Furnier's, but without the expressiveness, without the charisma. That is the sentence this entire list has been building toward, without the thing that made it work. They had the songs, the concept, 3 of the 5 people who built Alice Cooper into what it was. None of it was enough. Battle Axe is the one album they made. 1. The band dissolved. Alice Cooper has released 22 studio albums since. He is still touring. They thought they were Alice Cooper. They were not. And the audience answered that question immediately and permanently.